everybody, welcome back to the channel. Thank you for tuning in. I know, bit of a weird place to start the video, huh? You know, usually I'm working under the hood of something or I'm out somewhere with the GTR. And today I'm just standing in an empty parking spot, which probably gives you a pretty big clue as to what's going down. Now, for those of you that have been following the channel, you know a couple weeks ago I did a video where I did a direct comparison with my R35 GTR and an R34 GTR, which was a really fun time. If you didn't see that video, I'll go ahead and post a banner above my head, as well as put a link in the description down below so you can check that out if you're curious. But at the end of that video, I did say that there was some major things going on behind the scenes that I was excited to update you guys with. Now, of course, if you tuned in last week, there was no new video because I got sick. I couldn't get that video recorded. In fact, you can probably hear I'm not back at 100%, but I did want to give you guys an update of what was going down. Now, one of the things that did happen is with the R35 versus R34 video, I finally kicked GoPro to the curb. For those of you that have been following the channel for a while, you know I've been having issues with that camera, glitches, it was freezing, files were getting corrupted, and it did during the R34 footage. So to me, that was just a cardinal sin. I kicked that one to the curb. Today I'm recording on the DJI Pocket 3. I did do kind of a test video a couple weeks ago where I just took it to a car show and recorded some cars in both, you know, daylight and nighttime, just to kind of see what they're doing. But this is my first major video with the Pocket 3, so hopefully it looks better and hopefully it sounds better because it's new microphones, new camera, new everything. So that's awesome. Now to get to what you're probably most curious about is why am I standing in an empty parking spot? For those of you that have been with the channel for a while, you know that in this parking spot typically sat my R35 GTR, and obviously it's not here. Now you might be thinking, okay, cool, you know, maybe I'm probably taking the car to do FBO, maybe I'm gonna have the engine build a 2,000 horsepower beast. And I'm sorry to dash those hopes, but that's not the case. I actually sold the R35. It's gone, so yeah, no more R35 content, aside from maybe like some stuff I have just kind of saved on the computer. So for those of you that are big R35 fans, I'm sorry. But for those of you that are just automotive fans, don't worry. I already have an idea in my head of what the next car is going to be, and trust me, it's going to be a good one. I'm not going to be rolling around in some like TRD Camry, right? It's going to be another really good car, and I hope you'll be excited about it too. So in this video, what I want to do is I want to talk about why I got rid of the R35. I want to kind of do a final review on it. You know, talk about, you know, honestly what the car did really, really well, and what the car did kind of not so well, and of course, kind of give you a hint as to what's coming down the pike for my next car. However, two things before we get started. One, if you do want to see more automotive, particularly, well, Mike still has his R32 GTR and his S14, so we're gonna have that content, as well as my new car coming. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel. And two, if you'd like to support the channel, I do have the JD Archer shop. If you go to jdarcher.bigcartel.com, you can see a limited selection of t-shirts I've designed that are for sale. But with that out of the way, let's start talking about why I got rid of the R35. Obviously, I want to start this video with probably answering the question that you all are asking, and I might as well answer it now, is why did I get rid of the R35 GTR? I mean, let's be honest, the R35 GTR is a phenomenal car, and in my opinion, it is the top run pinnacle of JDM cars. I can't think of a JDM car out there that would compete with the R35 GTR as far as performance, reliability, and the reason why I sold it was actually a financial reason. To kind of let you guys in a little bit on what's going on with my real life is recently I was laid off from my job. The company was struggling financially, so something I kind of knew was coming because my territory could easily be divided amongst two more senior members. So I knew it was coming, and so when I was laid off, my family actually talked to me and they said, you know what, instead of, you know, going out and finding another job where we can kind of run into the same issue, why don't you just start your own business? And so that's what I did. I opened up my own business, and consequently, having a nice little wad of cash is probably a good place to be when it comes to opening up a new business. And as you know, the R35 GTR is not a cheap car. So I was able to sell it for a decent amount of money. I actually sold it for about $12,000 more than I originally bought it for. And so what I'm gonna do then is that's gonna put a big chunk of change into my living expense. And it also gives me enough money to buy my next car, which, like I said, don't worry, it's not a boring car. It's not like a TRD Camry or something like that. It is a good car. I will tell you what it is at the end of the video, so you won't have to worry. You will know at the end of the video. So that was one reason why I got rid of the R35, was strictly a financial reason. I needed to free up some capital, and that's what I did. Not only that, but I've also had the 35 now for about 5 years. I'd done just about everything that I was gonna do to it. I'd upgraded the brakes, I'd done the aero, the car had been on track, and I was having a lot of fun with it on the track. The issue I ran into with the car, actually taking the car to the track, and this is probably gonna sound bad on me, but I'm gonna be completely honest with you guys, is there's actually too much car for me. Now let's be honest, 99% of the people who own R35 GTRs, you know, they take it out on the weekends, you know, maybe they carve up the canyons, they think they're fast. Like I said, they think they're fast. Or they build a 2,000 horsepower beast, which, okay, is really only good in a straight line. And let's be honest, anybody can drive in a straight line. And so another reason why I want to get rid of the R35 is I actually want to step back to a car that was not as powerful. That way, as I go spend more time at the track, all of a sudden I am driving closer to the car's limits, and then as I get better, I'll upgrade the car to match my driver ability instead of me as a driver trying to keep up with the ability of the car. On streets of Willow, the car was just extremely heavy and extremely powerful. And for that track, you don't need that much power. So there again, financial reasons, and I want to improve as a driver and not rely on just a super sophisticated, powerful car to compensate for my inabilities. So I think it was a good move on a couple levels. Plus, you know, with the new car coming in, there's gonna be, you know, need for maintenance, upgrades, modifications. So there's gonna be a whole bunch of new content. So that's why I got rid of the R35. Let's start off this final review with talking about what the car did right. Because I'm gonna be honest, the car probably did more right than it did wrong. I've never been so impressed with a car in its dead stock form than I was with the R35 GTR. Because let's be honest, dead stock, the car's putting down 550 horsepower. That's no slouch, especially when you're used to getting cars that start off like around 300 to 350. So it's definitely a jump up just from where it's starting. On top of that, it's got the launch control, so it's got that blistering 0 to 60 time of 2.9 seconds. That is ridiculously quick for a fast car. So as far as a car that you want to start with, you can leave that car dead stock and have plenty of fun with it as it is, but then there's also plenty of options if you want to upgrade it as well. So one of the things the car did very, very well is it is just ridiculously fast, and to be honest, I can't think of too many cars out there, unless we jump into more of the exotic line, that could compete with the GTR fresh out of the box. So it is an amazingly well-performing car. On top of that, the car is stupidly reliable. I bought the car when it had 94,000 miles on it. I sold it with 140,000 miles on it. So I put over 40,000 miles on that car over the 5 years I had it. And it gave me very little in the way of issues mechanically. I think I only had 3 issues total. The first one was shortly after I got the car, I got the P0011 code, which is pretty much the car's way of telling you it's time to do the timing chain. So it doesn't leave you stranded. It doesn't hurt the car really. Basically you get the check engine light, and you know you have to take the car in to get the timing chain done. I had mine done by Sebastian at Specialty Z because he's pretty much the only guy here in Southern California I trust to take my cars to. So even though it had that issue, wasn't a bad fix and also didn't leave me stranded. The next issue that the car had could have kind of left me stranded, but it really didn't, and that was the pressure sensors on the transmission went bad. This happened about a year and a half, 2 years ago. So the car had like maybe 120,000 miles on it. The pressure sensors went bad. And the thing that really sucks about that is the pressure sensors are not expensive. They're not hard to get off the transmission. But the problem is they sit directly on top of the transmission, which means the only way to get to them is if you drop the transmission out of the car. So once I found that out, I decided to make the choice of just having the whole transmission rebuilt. I figure if I'm gonna pay someone to drop it out of the car, let's just go ahead and rebuild the whole thing, and then I don't have to worry about anything in the future of the car. So there again, when the pressure sensors went bad, basically what happened was I lost all of my odd gears, if I remember right. So I had gears 2, 4, and 6, which was perfectly enough to get me home, so it didn't leave me stranded, but obviously not something you wanted to drive around on a regular basis. If I really wanted to push the idea, I could have basically cleared the codes, and it would have brought back my odd number gears and reverse, but I didn't want to play that game. So once it happened and we were able to figure out the pressure sensors, I just sent it off to SP Engineering. They did the sensors, rebuilt the whole transmission, cost me about $7 grand. But that's on me, you know, they could have just done the pressure sensors, would have cost me $700. I chose to do the rebuild. The last thing that ever went wrong with the car actually did leave me stranded, but in a really stupid way. So there's an idler pulley that's part of the serpentine belt, and the ball bearing in it failed, which caused it to seize. Therefore, I lost my serpentine belt, couldn't drive the car home, but the pulley was only about 50, 60 bucks. It was at the local Nissan shop. Took me about, I think like 15, 20 minutes to put it on, and I was back on the road. So aside from those three things, the car gave me no issues whatsoever. So it's really something to say about a car that's this ridiculously fast and powerful, also this reliable. Another thing that was really great about the R35 is, for those of you that are watching the channel, you know I daily drive my cars. So my R35 GTR was my daily driver, and to be honest, it's probably one of my better that I've had. You know, when you look at the Mark IV Supra, the FDRX7, the S2000s, all those other cars, I use them as dailies. Maybe I shouldn't have, but I did. But the R35 GTR, you can use as a daily, no issue. I mean, like I said, you got the reliability, so you don't have to worry about that. The cabin, super comfy. It's got noise canceling built into the cabin as well. So it's not terribly noisy, especially if you are running an aftermarket exhaust like I was. It's not annoying. I actually drove it all the way from Seattle to Los Angeles. The exhaust tone did not get annoying. It was not overbearing. So very, very comfortable. Seats, super comfy. Like I said, Seattle, Los Angeles, no issues whatsoever. Of course, because it's a newer car than what I'm used to having, it has all of the creature comforts. You know, it's got, you know, the Bluetooth radio. It can connect to my phone, so I can make phone calls. It can do the maps. So in that, great daily driver as far as, you know, you get all the creature comforts of the modern car as well. As far as passengers, now obviously you can put someone on the passenger seat. They're not going to complain. It's perfectly comfortable. That seat moves around. As far as the back seat, I'm going to be honest, behind me as the driver, you're not going to put anything back there. I'm only 5'10", and even then that seat was pretty much almost on that rear seat, so no one's really going to sit back there. They will if they have to, but they're not going to be back there for long. Now, if you're going to put somebody in the rear passenger side, they can probably be there a little bit longer, because if you have somebody in the front passenger seat, they can move their seat much more farther forward because they don't have the pedals, which means their knees can get underneath that dash and they can actually move that seat pretty far forward. Someone can sit in the back passenger seat without too much of an issue, provided they're under a certain height. Now, the car does have the reverse teardrop shape, so the rear slants. So unless you're over if you're over 5'10", you're probably gonna be riding like this. So they're probably not gonna be back there for too long. If they're under that, not a problem. It's also a good family car. Like I said, I've had the car for 5 years. My kid is now 3 years old, which means my kid was pretty much raised in the back of that car. And we didn't have a lot of issues. You know, the car seat fit back there just fine when he was in the infant seat, which faces backwards. There's a little bit more space once he got turned around frontwards. And then on top of that, the car's got a ridiculously huge trunk. I mean, this trunk is massive. I was able to fit strollers, backpacks, anything that kid was gonna need in the back of that car, along with anything me or my wife would need. And there was room to spare. So it has got a ridiculously huge trunk. The only thing that makes the trunk a little bit impractical is the actual opening of the trunk. So once you pop the hood, it's got a much smaller opening than the actual trunk, which means bigger items might not fit through that hole. But if it fits through that hole, you can probably much take anything you're gonna need. So all in all, like I said, the car really was a great car. It's an extremely fast car. It's an extremely technologically advanced car. It's comfortable. You can use it as a daily driver. It's comfortable. You can take people with you. I use it as a family car. And even just driving around the streets, super comfy. As you know, you can adjust your shift points. You have the R mode, the comfort mode, the regular mode. So really good car. There's not a lot of negatives I can say about it. Definitely more positives. So I really did like the car. Now, of course, I've got to talk about what the car did that was not so great. And the thing about the car is there's a few complaints I have about the car that's had to do with my personal preferences. And then there's a few things that the car did, but just didn't do that well in my opinion. So to start off with the things that the car did but didn't do that well, I'm gonna actually start off with the hands-free calling. So interesting thing about the car, I don't know why they did this, but when you're stopped, the volume on the in-car audio for hearing the other people talk on the other end of the phone is at a good volume. You can hear, you can converse. But for some reason, as soon as you start driving, it actually lowers the volume, which makes it very hard to hear the person on the other side, which doesn't make any sense. You think you'd want to get louder because as you're driving, your exhaust is going to make more noise. But for some reason, I don't know what it is, it actually made it quieter. And I did everything I could to find a way around that. Like I turned up the volume on the stereo, didn't do it. For some reason, the phone, I tried to turn up the Bluetooth volume directly from the phone, and it's actually grayed out. It's stuck at like the 50% mark. You can't go higher. So you're really kind of stuck at that low level, and sometimes it makes it hard for you to hear other people when they're talking to you. They hear you just fine. You just can't hear them. Funny enough, this happened like 2 or 3 times. I think I was like running my map program, or I was running music, and when someone called me, it didn't gray out the Bluetooth volume. So I was able to turn up the volume on the phone, and it actually made it loud enough to hear. So obviously the software can compensate for that, but it's like almost like you have to get lucky and it glitches around it. But other than that, you're gonna have a problem hearing people talk to you on the phone if you're answering phone calls while you're driving. So that's something that the car, even though the car did it, it didn't do it very well. The other thing that the car did not do very well is actually the gate opener. I'm actually in a gated area, and if I use the actual clicker that was supplied to me by where I'm at, the gate opens from like way back there. But when I programmed it into the rear view mirror of the GTR, for some reason, it didn't work that well. Like I almost had to be right up next to the gate for it to actually open. So it's really annoying that even though it's something you can do with the car, it didn't do very well. But that was pretty much it for the things that the car did but didn't do very well. For those of you who have been watching for the channel for a while, you know I have a few personal complaints just based on preferences with the car. One of the things being is that the seat, the driver's seat just sits way too high. I don't know why they designed it that way, but when you sit in that car, it's almost like sitting in a lowered SUV. You feel like you sit really high. I know I'd always get frustrated whenever I got in my wife's Camry because I'd get in the Camry and I felt like I was sitting lower, closer to the road than I was in the GTR, and I didn't like that. I would like to feel low slung, close to the road. The other thing that, you know, is a complaint with the GTR is the front lip. At stock ride height, which mine was at, that lip sits really, really low. In fact, I think I measured it at anywhere from 4.5 to 4 3/4 inches. And consequently, that lip is gonna scrape on almost any driveway. Most GTR owners consider the front lip an expendable part at this point, where they figure they're gonna have to replace it every 2-3 years. And that's not an over exaggeration. I don't know what it is about California. We don't get a lot of rain, but for some reason we have really steep driveways. And even when I take them at angles, that lip would sometimes scrape, and there's just nothing I can do about it. It just sat really low. And I can only imagine if I lowered it like 1/4 to 1/2 inch like most people do, that front lip would be hitting everything. Not only that, but that lip is just at the perfect height when it comes to parking. Now, if you have a 35 GTR, I recommend always backing into a place because you have the backup camera, which works phenomenally, by the way. But if you do nose in, you're gonna run into an issue. So with those parking stops, with the height of that lip the way it's at, is just high enough to clear those parking stops if you pull in too far. But as soon as you try to reverse out, it wants to try and pull that front lip and front bumper off of the car. So that's something you really have to watch out for if you own one of these cars. You either have to be really good about pulling in and not pulling in too far, or always back in. But other than those few complaints, I mean, like I said, I daily drove the car, very little complaints, very well done car. And there it is, my final review of the R35 GTR. Now, this wasn't a terribly in-depth review. The reason why is just recently I did a more in-depth, updated review on the R35 GTR when I crossed the 4-year mark. So if you do want to see that video, I will put a banner above my head. I'll put a link in the description down below. If you want to check that out, I talk about a lot more things about the car. I show it, of course, and I talk a little bit more. In this video, I did talk about things like the stereo and the gate opener, which I've never talked about before. But like I said, this is kind of wanted to be like a final review. That way you're getting the final review from somebody who's owned the car, driven the car, sold the car. So I'm not trying to blow any smoke or candy coat anything. This is my honest to God belief in the car, and I think it is an amazing car. If it is on your radar to get and it is in your ability to do so, I heavily recommend doing it. You're never going to regret it. But now where does that leave us? That leaves us with the question of, well, if I've had the pinnacle of JDM cars, where do I go from here? Now, as I did say, I wanted to get another car that was fun, exciting, was a step back in power. That way when I go to the track, I'm working to master the track instead of master the car. Where does that leave me? Some of you may already suspect where this is going. You may know my car history, which you know I've had a couple of Mark IV Supras, I've had an FD RX-7, I've had a Honda S2000, I've had an R32 GTR, I've had an R35 GTR, and for those of you that watched the R35 versus R34 video, you know, I kind of want an R34 GTR. So what does that leave me? That's right, the R33 GTR. I am now actively looking for an R33 GTR. And I'm doing this for a couple of reasons. One, I think that if I do get the R34 in the future, if my business does succeed, I think it gives me the whole gambit of experience with the GTRs, because I'll have the R32, the R33, the R35, and then the R34. So I'll be able to experience the whole GTR line. I think it'll be an also interesting car in that some of the technology from the 32 carried over to the 33, like the transmission and the engine, of course. And then some of the things from the 33 carried onto the 34, like the HICAS and the ATEZA system. So it's a great in-between. Also, the car does have a bit of historical significance. It was the first production model car to break the 8-minute mark on the Nürburgring. So it does have some good historical significance. Now that being said, for some reason, the R35 is probably the R33 is the most divisive car in the GTR community. The reason why is people love the R32. Why? It's the original Godzilla. It's the car that earned the name Godzilla. According to some people, and me included, it's the only car that really should be called Godzilla. So people love the 32. Then of course you've got the 34. And the 34 is the movie star, the video game star, the unicorn that we all dream about and want because, you know, either we played Gran Turismo or Forza, or we watched the Fast and Furious movies and we want the 34. And then you get the 33, which is kind of like the middle child. Everybody just ignores it or they hate on it. So I would love the opportunity to own it. That way I can assess for you guys whether or not it's deserving of all that hate or indifference. So you'll be able to go with me on that journey as I push the GTR to what it can do a little bit of work on it, take it to the track, and we'll be able to decide whether or not the R33 GTR is the most slept on GTR, or is it in fact, as they refer to it, just the boat and not really worth anyone's attention. So hopefully we will find that out over the next couple months. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, go hit that thumbs up button to let me know. It does help the channel out a lot. As I did say at the beginning of the video, if you'd like to see more automotive, particularly, now I can tell you, more GTR and of course Mike's S14 content, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. You can also follow me on all forms of social media, which include Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. Those will all be linked in the description down below. Now, after watching this video, if you have any questions about the R35, if you think I don't know what I'm talking about, if there's some questions you have about the car in general, or you want to talk about the 33, do you think I'm absolutely stupid for buying a 33 GTR? Or are you excited about the 33 GTR? Go ahead and post in the comment section down below. I will respond to you. I thank you all for watching, and until next time, forget everything else, focus on the finish line.